"My blood is the same as hers," said the beggar boy to the millionaire, offering to help his sick daughter. Desperate, the father tries to understand what motivates this boy, who comes from the streets with an unbelievable offer. When the tests confirm the match, he is faced with a devastating secret that challenges everything he believed about his life and choices. Could he save his sick daughter? Watch to the end. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Marcus Bennett stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, his silhouette casting a long shadow across the polished marble floor. The latest Forbes magazine lay open on his desk, his face gracing the cover with the headline, "The Man Who Never Fails." The irony wasn't lost on him as he took another sip of his now cold coffee. The city sprawled beneath him like a complex circuit board, its lights blinking in the growing dusk. Each of those lights represented a piece of his empire, the hotels, the tech companies, the real estate developments. But right now, none of it mattered. His phone buzzed again, another message from his assistant about an urgent board meeting. He ignored it. Instead, his thoughts drifted to the small bedroom 2 floors above his office, where his daughter Sophie slept peacefully in their penthouse apartment. At 8 years old, she was his universe, though he rarely had time to show it. Her golden curls and bright blue eyes were carbon copies of her mother's, a thought that still brought a familiar ache to his chest. The cleaning staff had already gone home, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the gentle hum of the building's ventilation system. He loosened his tie, a gesture that would have shocked his employees who had never seen him anything less than immaculate. The Marcus Bennett they knew was a force of nature, a man who had built his empire from scratch through sheer determination and an unwavering belief in meritocracy. A small frame on his desk caught his eye, a photo of Sophie at her last birthday party. He had managed to attend for exactly 27 minutes before being pulled away by an emergency conference call with investors in Singapore. The guilt that had gnawed at him then returned with renewed force. His intercom buzzed, startling him from his reverie. "Mr. Bennett," his night secretary's voice trembled slightly, "Miss Sophie's nanny is on the line. She says it's urgent." The word urgent had lost much of its meaning in Marcus's world. Everything was urgent in business, urgent meetings, urgent deals, urgent crises to be managed. But something in the secretary's voice made his hand freeze, halfway to his coffee cup. "Put her through," he said, his voice maintaining its usual commanding tone despite the sudden tightness in his chest. "Mr. Bennett," the nanny's voice was tight with barely controlled panic, "Sophie collapsed during her ballet lesson. She's running a very high fever, and there's blood, sir. They've taken her to Mount Sinai." The coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. For the first time in his life, Marcus Bennett felt completely powerless. The city lights continued to blink below, indifferent to the way his world had suddenly tilted on its axis. Within minutes, he was in his private elevator, his usual methodical nature giving way to barely contained panic. His driver was already waiting with the car when he burst through the lobby doors, sending startled looks through the security staff who had never seen Marcus Bennett run anywhere. The hospital was only 15 minutes away, but each second felt like an eternity. Marcus gripped his phone, reading through his daughter's medical history that his assistant had already forwarded to the hospital. Sophie had always been healthy, almost surprisingly so, given how fragile she had looked as a newborn. The memory of her birth and of Rachel holding her for the first time crashed over him like a wave. Rachel. In moments like these, her absence felt like a physical wound. She would have known what to do, what questions to ask, how to make sense of the medical jargon that would surely be thrown at them. But Rachel had been gone for 6 years, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone. The car pulled up to the emergency entrance of Mount Sinai Hospital. Marcus could see a small crowd of medical staff waiting. His assistant had obviously called ahead. As he stepped out of the car, he straightened his tie and squared his shoulders, falling back on the familiar armor of his business persona. But inside, a voice kept screaming that this was one problem he couldn't solve with money or influence. A doctor stepped forward to meet him, her face grave. "Mr. Bennett, I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. We need to talk about your daughter's condition." Marcus nodded, following her through the sterile corridors. The smell of antiseptic filled his nostrils, and the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on the walls. Each step echoed with a finality that seemed to mock his usual confidence. "Sophie's symptoms are consistent with a rare autoimmune condition," Dr. Chen explained as they walked. "Her body is attacking its own blood cells. We're running more tests, but she's going to need immediate intervention." They stopped outside a room where Marcus could see Sophie through the window, her small form dwarfed by the hospital bed and the machinery surrounding her. Her golden curls spread across the pillow like a halo, her face unnaturally pale against the white hospital sheets. "Mr. Bennett," Dr. Chen's voice cut through his thoughts, "there's something else you need to know. Sophie's blood type is extremely rare. Finding a match for the transfusion she needs, it won't be easy." Marcus turned to face the doctor, his jaw set in determination. "Whatever it costs, whatever needs to be done, I'll make it happen. Just tell me what you need." Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. "Mr. Bennett, I don't think you understand. This isn't about money. Sophie's blood type is one of the rarest in the world. We need to find a match, and we need to find it quickly." Through the window, Sophie stirred slightly in her sleep, her small hand clutching the stuffed elephant she'd had since birth. Marcus pressed his hand against the glass, feeling the cold surface against his palm. For the first time since Rachel's passing, he felt truly alone. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of medical terminology and urgent phone calls. Marcus had activated every contact in his considerable network, reaching out to specialists across the globe. His office had been temporarily relocated to a private waiting room in the hospital, where his assistant coordinated with medical facilities worldwide, while he alternated between Sophie's bedside and endless consultations with doctors. Sophie drifted in and out of consciousness, her usual vibrant energy replaced by an unsettling stillness. During her brief moments of awareness, she would smile weakly at her father, trying to reassure him in a way that made his heart ache. "I'm okay, Daddy," she'd whisper, even as the machines around her beeped ominously. Marcus had never felt more useless. His wealth, which had always been his solution to every problem, seemed meaningless now. He had offered to fly in specialists from Switzerland, to charter private jets for potential donors, to fund entire research programs, but none of it mattered without a compatible donor. It was during one of his rare breaks from Sophie's bedside that he first noticed the boy. Marcus had stepped out to the hospital's entrance for some fresh air, his tie loosened and his usually pristine suit wrinkled from hours of sitting in hospital chairs. The boy was standing in the shadows near the emergency entrance, so still that he almost blended into the background. He couldn't have been more than 11 or 12, though his eyes held a hardness that spoke of years beyond his age. His clothes were worn and dirty, a faded t-shirt, torn jeans, and what might have once been white sneakers. But it wasn't his appearance that caught Marcus's attention. It was the way the boy was watching the hospital entrance, with an intensity that seemed almost familiar. A security guard approached the boy, ready to shoo him away from the private hospital's pristine entrance. But before he could reach him, the boy spoke, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet evening air. "My blood is the same as hers." The guard paused, then laughed dismissively. "Sure, kid. Move along now." Marcus would have normally ignored such a scene, but something made him stop. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps it was something in the boy's unwavering gaze. He found himself walking toward them, his business instincts telling him not to ignore any possibility, no matter how unlikely. "Wait," Marcus called out, his voice commanding enough to make both the guard and the boy turn. "What did you say?" The boy met his gaze without flinching, something few adults manage to do. "The girl upstairs, the one who needs blood. Mine's the same." "And how would you know that?" Marcus asked, studying the boy's face. There was something about his features that tugged at his memory, though he couldn't place why. "Just do," the boy replied simply. Test me if you want." Marcus should have dismissed him. It was probably just another scam, someone trying to take advantage of a desperate situation. But he had spent his career reading people, and something about the boy's quiet certainty gave him pause. He turned to the guard. "Get Dr. Chen down here." While they waited, Marcus continued to study the boy, who stood his ground without fidgeting or looking away. There was a stillness about him that seemed at odds with his age, a kind of patience that spoke of long hours of waiting and watching. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Alex," the boy replied, and something about the way he said it made Marcus's chest tighten inexplicably. "Doctor." Chen arrived looking skeptical when Marcus explained the situation, but one look at his face told her not to argue. Within minutes, they were escorting Alex to the laboratory for testing, the boy walking between them with the same quiet certainty he'd shown outside. As they walked, Marcus noticed more details about the boy. The way he moved with a slight limp, favoring his right leg. The careful way he observed everything around him, as if mapping escape routes. The small notebook that peeked out from his back pocket, its pages worn and dog-eared. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked as they waited for the initial blood draw. Alex looked at him for a long moment before answering, his voice soft but firm. "Because I can." The simplicity of the answer caught Marcus off guard. In his world, everything had a price, every action had an ulterior motive. But there was no guile in the boy's face, no hint of deception in his steady gaze. As the nurse prepared for the blood draw, Alex rolled up his sleeve without hesitation, revealing arms that were too thin for his age. Marcus found himself wanting to ask more questions, to understand where this child had come from and why he was here. But before he could, Dr. Chen burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Mr. Bennett," she said, holding up a preliminary test result. "The initial typing matches. We need to run more tests, but..." She trailed off, but the implication was clear. Against all odds, this boy from the shadows might be the miracle they had been praying for. The hospital laboratory hummed with activity as technicians rushed to complete the comprehensive blood analysis. Marcus paced the corridor outside, his phone forgotten in his pocket for the first time in years. The boy, Alex, sat quietly in a plastic chair, his worn sneakers barely touching the floor. He hadn't asked for food or water, hadn't complained about the multiple blood draws, hadn't shown any sign of discomfort during the hours of waiting. Marcus found himself stealing glances at the boy when he thought Alex wasn't looking. There was something hauntingly familiar about his profile, the way he held himself, the quiet dignity that seemed far too mature for his years. Each time Marcus tried to place these familiar elements, the recognition slipped away like water through his fingers. "Mr. Bennett," Dr. Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. She held a tablet in her hands, her expression a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "The results are conclusive. The blood type matches perfectly, not just the basic type or the rare markers we were worried about. It's extraordinary." Marcus felt his knees weaken slightly, though he maintained his composure. "How soon can we begin the transfusion? We need to run a few more health checks on Alex, but theoretically we could start tonight." She paused, glancing at the boy. "However, there are some legal considerations. He's clearly a minor. We need parental consent." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus turned to Alex, who met his gaze steadily. "Where are your parents?" he asked, trying to keep his voice gentle. "Don't have any," Alex replied, simply. No tremor in his voice, no plea for sympathy, just a statement of fact. "Surely there must be someone, a guardian, a social worker." Marcus pressed. Alex shrugged. "Ran away from the group home 6 months ago. Nobody's looking." The casual way he delivered this information made Marcus's chest tighten. He thought of Sophie upstairs, surrounded by the best medical care money could buy, while this boy had been surviving on the streets. The contrast was almost unbearable. "Dr. Chen," Marcus said, his business voice returning, "what are our options?" The doctor looked uncomfortable. "Without parental consent, we'd need a court order. Emergency authorization for medical procedures involving minors. I can have our legal team start the process, but it could take days. Days we don't have, Marcus finished. He pulled out his phone, finally remembering its existence. Give me an hour. One call to his personal attorney set things in motion. Judge Carlton, who owed Marcus more than a few favors, was reached at his country club. Emergency paperwork was drafted and expedited. All the while, Alex sat quietly, watching the adults around him scramble with an expression that bordered on amusement. While they waited for the legal documents, a nurse brought Alex a tray of food from the hospital cafeteria. Marcus watched as the boy ate methodically, taking small, careful bites as if savoring each one. He wanted to ask more questions, to understand how this child had known about Sophie, how he had known his blood would match, but something held him back. Instead, he found himself saying, "You can have more if you're still hungry." Alex paused, a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. "I'm good. Better not. To eat too much before medical stuff." The response, so practical and mature, caught Marcus off guard again. "How you seem to know a lot about medical procedures. You learn things living on the streets, watching, listening." Alex's eyes met his again. "People talk a lot in hospitals. They don't notice who's listening." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. The emergency authorization had been granted. Dr. Chen immediately stepped in, efficient and professional once more. "We'll need to prep Alex for the procedure. Mr. Bennett, you should go be with Sophie. We'll send someone to update you once we begin." Marcus nodded but found himself reluctant to leave. He turned to Alex one last time. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling inadequate. "I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you." Alex's expression softened slightly. Sometimes people just need help. Doesn't have to be complicated. As Marcus walked back to Sophie's room, those words echoed in his head. In his world of complex deals and hidden motives, the simple wisdom of a street child had somehow cut through all his defenses. He found himself wondering about Alex's story, about the circumstances that had led him to the hospital doors. Sophie was awake when he entered her room, her face brightening at his arrival. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice weak but her smile strong. "The nurses said they found someone to help me." Marcus sat beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. "Yes, sweetheart, they did." "Is it someone nice?" The question, so innocent and so Sophie-like, made Marcus pause. He thought of Alex's quiet strength, his simple explanation for helping a stranger. "Yes," he said finally, "someone very nice indeed." As he sat with his daughter, watching her drift back to sleep, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something profound was shifting in his carefully ordered world. The universe had sent him a miracle in the form of a homeless boy, and nothing about it made sense. But then again, maybe it didn't need to. Maybe, as Alex had said, it didn't have to be complicated. While the medical team prepared Alex for the transfusion, Marcus found himself drawn to his phone, doing something he hadn't done in years, searching through old emails. There was something about Alex that nagged at his consciousness, a persistent feeling that he was missing something important. His executive assistant, Maria, had maintained meticulous records of every correspondence for the past 15 years. She had organized everything into searchable archives, including items Marcus had specifically asked her to ignore or delete. Now, as he scrolled through the dates, he found himself grateful for her thoroughness. A notification from Dr. Chen interrupted his search. The transfusion was about to begin. Marcus made his way to Sophie's room, where the medical team was making final preparations. Through the observation window, he could see Alex in the adjacent room, already hooked up to the equipment that would transfer his blood to Sophie. The boy caught his eye through the window and gave a small nod. Something about that gesture, confident, reassuring, almost protective, triggered another memory. Marcus had done the same thing, hadn't he? Years ago, in another hospital room, looking through another window at his phone buzzed in his hand. An email alert from the archive search he'd started. Possible match found, September 2013. Marcus opened the email with trembling fingers. The sender's name hit him like a physical blow. Elena Martinez, former junior accountant at Bennett Enterprises. The subject line was simple. Important. Please read. The memory crashed over him like a wave. Elena, quiet, efficient Elena, who had worked in the accounting department for barely a year. She had requested a meeting with him, insisted it was urgent. But he had been in the middle of a massive merger, working 20-hour days, juggling international conference calls. He had instructed Maria to handle it. The email was brief. Mr. Bennett, I've tried to reach you through official channels without success. This is a personal matter that requires your immediate attention. I'm pregnant, and you are the father. Please contact me to discuss this situation. Regards, Elena Martinez. Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. He remembered now, the company Christmas party, both of them working late after everyone else had left. It had been a moment of weakness, a brief connection in a time of intense pressure. He had barely thought about it afterward, and Elena had transferred to another department shortly after. His hands shaking, he searched for more emails. There were 3 others, each more urgent than the last, all marked as handled by his team. The final one simply said, I understand your silence as an answer. I won't contact you again. But remember the name Alex. It's what I'm going to call him. Alex. The name echoed in his head as he looked through the window again. The boy's profile so familiar now that he really looked at it. The quiet dignity that had seemed so out of place. The way he held himself, so reminiscent of Mr. Bennett? A nurse touched his arm gently. The transfusion has started. Would you like to sit with Sophie? He nodded mechanically, his mind spinning. As he sat beside Sophie's bed, watching her color slowly improve as Alex's blood flowed into her veins, the full weight of what was happening crashed over him. His daughter was being saved by his son, a son he had never acknowledged, never even allowed himself to consider. Sophie stirred in her sleep, her hand reaching out instinctively for his. He took it, marveling at how small and delicate it felt in his. Through the window he could see Alex reading a worn paperback book, completely at ease despite the needles and machines. A memory surfaced, himself at that age, reading books in hospital waiting rooms while his own father attended endless business meetings. He had promised himself he would be different, would be present for his children. Yet here he was, discovering his son in the most devastating way possible. The irony was almost too much to bear. He, Marcus Bennett, who prided himself on controlling every aspect of his life, who had built an empire on careful planning and meticulous attention to detail, had failed to see what was right in front of him. His son had been living on the streets, while he had been featured on magazine covers as a paragon of success. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Chen entered, her face bright with good news. The transfusion is going perfectly, she said. Sophie's numbers are already improving. It's remarkable how quickly her body is responding to the donor blood. Of course it was responding, Marcus thought. It was her brother's blood flowing through her veins. Family helping family in the most fundamental way possible. The universe had found a way to force him to face the consequences of his past choices, and it had done so by saving his daughter's life. The transfusion lasted through the night. Marcus remained in Sophie's room, watching the steady improvement in her vital signs while his mind raced with the revelation about Alex. Every few minutes, his eyes would drift to the windows separating the rooms, where his son, the word still felt foreign in his mind, lay quietly reading his tattered book. Dawn was breaking over the city when Dr. Chen announced that the procedure was complete. Sophie's color had returned to normal, and her breathing was stronger and more regular. The medical team began disconnecting the equipment, their movements efficient and practiced. When will she wake up? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse from hours of silence. Soon, Dr. Chen replied, checking Sophie's vitals one more time. The sedation will wear off gradually. She's responding beautifully to the treatment. In the next room, Alex was already sitting up, refusing the wheelchair a nurse had brought for him. "I can walk," he said firmly, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The movement was careful, deliberate, but there was no sign of weakness in his bearing. Marcus found himself torn between staying with Sophie and following Alex. The boy had already started walking toward the door, his backpack, threadbare and patched, slung over one shoulder. "Wait," Marcus called out, his voice carrying through the open door. "Please, we need to talk." Alex paused in the doorway but didn't turn around. "About what?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Marcus glanced at Sophie, still sleeping peacefully, then back at Alex. "About Elena," he said quietly. The boy's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. For a moment, Marcus thought he would bolt, but instead Alex turned slowly to face him. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes, Elena's eyes, Marcus now realized, held a universe of unspoken emotions. "She tried to tell you," Alex said simply. "She tried 3 times." Marcus felt each word like a physical blow. "I know, I found the emails." "She kept them all," Alex continued, his voice steady. "Printed them out. Showed them to me when I was old enough to understand. Said I should know where I came from, even if where I came from didn't want to know me." The clinical fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, too harsh. Marcus wanted to defend himself, to explain about the merger, the pressure, the chaos of that time in his life. But every excuse died in his throat as he looked at this child, his child, who had survived on the streets while he had lived in luxury. "What happened to her?" Marcus asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. "She got sick," Alex replied, and for the first time, there was a slight tremor in his voice. "Cancer. No insurance after she lost her job. She tried to fight it, but..." He shrugged, the gesture heartbreakingly adult. "The system took over after that." Marcus felt physically ill. Eleanor had lost her job, likely because of the corporate restructuring he had ordered during the merger. The same merger that had been so important, he couldn't take her calls, couldn't read her emails. The cascade of consequences from his decisions crashed over him like a tidal wave. "And you've been on your own since then?" "More or less. Foster homes at first, group homes later. Didn't stick around long in any of them." Alex adjusted his backpack strap, a nervous gesture that reminded Marcus painfully of how young he really was. Streets are better sometimes. At least you know what to expect. Marcus took a step forward, then stopped when he saw Alex tense. "You knew who I was." "All this time, who Sophie was?" A ghost of a smile crossed Alex's face. "Hard to miss your face on magazine covers. Besides, Mom kept everything. News clippings, articles. Said someday I might want to know about my father's world." His expression hardened slightly. "Didn't think I'd ever actually step into it." "But you did," Marcus said softly. "You came forward to help Sophie." "She's innocent," Alex replied simply. "She needed help, that's all." The simplicity of the statement cut through all of Marcus's defenses. This boy, who had every reason to be bitter, to want revenge, to demand compensation, had instead chosen to help his half-sister simply because she needed it. Through the window, Sophie stirred slightly in her sleep. Alex glanced at her, and for a moment his carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. "She looks like her pictures," he said quietly, "from the society pages. Mom used to show them to me sometimes, said I had a sister out there somewhere." Marcus felt tears threatening for the first time in years. "Alex, please, let me help you now. Let me try to make this right." But Alex was already moving toward the door again. "She'll be okay now," he said, nodding towards Sophie. "That's what matters." "You matter too," Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. "Please, just stay. We can figure this out." Alex paused at the doorway, his hand resting on the frame. For a moment, Marcus thought he saw something flicker in the boy's eyes, longing perhaps or uncertainty, but then it was gone, replaced by the same careful neutrality. "Sometimes," Alex said quietly, "the things we break can't be fixed with money, Mr. Bennett." Before Marcus could respond, the boy was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor. Marcus stood frozen, torn between following him and staying with Sophie. Through the window he could see the first rays of sunlight painting the city skyline gold, the same color as Eleanor's eyes, as Alex's eyes. Sophie woke up just as the morning shift nurses were changing over. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing immediately on her father's face. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "I had the strangest dream." Marcus leaned forward, taking her small hand in his. "What kind of dream, sweetheart?" "There was a boy," she said, frowning slightly as she tried to remember. "He was reading a book, and he was giving me something important, something I needed." She looked around the room, confused. Was that real? Marcus squeezed her hand gently, his throat tight with emotion. "Yes, Sophie. There was a boy, and he helped make you better." Sophie's face brightened. "Can I meet him? I want to say thank you." The innocent request hit Marcus like a physical blow. How could he explain to his 8-year-old daughter that her savior, her brother, had walked away? That he had driven him away years before she was even born? Before he could formulate a response, Dr. Chen entered the room, beaming at the sight of her awake patient. "Well, look who's finally joined us. How are you feeling, Sophie?" "Better," Sophie replied, sitting up straighter in bed. "Much better. Can I have breakfast? I'm starving." The doctor laughed, checking Sophie's vitals with practiced efficiency. "Your appetite returning is a very good sign. I'll have the nurses bring you something light to start with." As Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet, Sophie turned back to her father. "Daddy, where did the boy go? The one from my dream?" Marcus saw Dr. Chen glance up sharply at the question, her expression curious. He had never explained to the medical staff who Alex was, had barely processed it himself. Now, looking at his daughter's expectant face, he realized he would have to find a way to tell her the truth eventually. "He had to go," Marcus said carefully, "but I hope we'll see him again." "Was he nice?" "In my dream, he seemed nice, quiet, but nice." Marcus smiled despite the ache in his chest. "Yes, sweetheart. He was very nice. Very brave too." Sophie nodded sagely, as if this confirmed something she had already known. "Like a guardian angel," she declared. "That's what Nanny says about people who help you when you need it most." The comparison made Marcus's eyes burn. A guardian angel who slept under bridges and scrounged for meals. A guardian angel who had every reason to hate him, but had chosen to save his sister instead. A nurse arrived with Sophie's breakfast: toast, scrambled eggs, and apple juice. As she helped Sophie sit up properly, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Maria. She had already started a discreet search for Alex, activating the network of private investigators they usually used for business intelligence. The message: read. Preliminary reports suggest he frequents the area around St. Michael's Community Center. They run a soup kitchen there. Want me to send someone to monitor the location? Marcus typed a quick response. No surveillance, just keep the information on file. He watched as Sophie ate her breakfast with evident enjoyment, her movements becoming stronger and more coordinated with each bite. The color had returned to her cheeks, and her eyes were bright and alert. All thanks to Alex's gift, a gift given freely, without conditions or expectations. "Daddy?" Sophie's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You look sad. Are you worried about something?" Marcus forced a smile. "No, sweetheart, just thinking." "About the boy?" "Yes," he admitted. "About the boy." Sophie put down her fork, looking at him with the peculiar intensity children sometimes have. "You know what Mommy used to say? That sometimes the best things in life come as surprises. Like how she surprised you by ordering pizza that time you were working late, remember?" The memory, one he hadn't thought about in years, caught him off guard. Rachel had always known how to break through his workaholic tendencies, how to remind him that life wasn't all about control and planning. Maybe the boy was like that, Sophie continued, returning to her breakfast, a surprise that turned out to be exactly what we needed. Marcus looked at his daughter, marveling at her simple wisdom. She was right, of course. Alex had been a surprise, one he had actively tried to avoid years ago. But now, watching Sophie recover thanks to her brother's gift, He realized that some surprises couldn't be controlled or denied. They could only be accepted, and hopefully, if one was lucky enough, embraced. The next few days passed in a blur of medical checkups and recovery milestones. Sophie grew stronger by the hour, her natural vivacity returning with each passing day. But for Marcus, every moment of joy at his daughter's recovery was tempered by the growing weight of his guilt about Alex. He found himself unable to focus. During board meetings, his mind wandering to the image of his son's worn sneakers and threadbare backpack. The quarterly reports and merger discussions that had once consumed his entire attention now seemed trivial compared to the knowledge that his own child had been sleeping rough on the streets of his city. One afternoon, while Sophie was napping, Marcus slipped away from the hospital and had his driver take him to St. Michael's Community Center. The building was old but well maintained, its brick facade weathered by decades of city life. A small line of people waited outside the soup kitchen entrance, their faces bearing various degrees of hardship and resignation. Inside, the air was warm and heavy with the smell of cooking food. Volunteers moved efficiently between tables, serving bowls of soup and plates of sandwiches. Marcus felt painfully out of place in his tailored suit, but he forced himself to approach the front desk. The woman behind the counter looked up, her grey hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her name tag read, Sister Margaret. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes taking in his expensive attire with quiet assessment. "I'm looking for someone," Marcus said, suddenly unsure how to explain his situation. "A boy named Alex. He's 11, maybe 12, dark hair, brown eyes." Sister Margaret's expression shifted subtly. "We see many children here, sir. What's your interest in this particular one?" The protective note in her voice was clear. Marcus realized how he must look, a wealthy man asking about a homeless child. He took a deep breath and decided on honesty. "He's my son," he said quietly, "though I only recently found out." Sister Margaret studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, "Alex helps in the kitchen sometimes. Washes dishes mostly, he's good. With the younger children too, helps them with their homework when they come in." Marcus's heart clenched at this glimpse into his son's life. "When was the last time you saw him?" "A few days ago," she replied. "He mentioned he had something important to do at the hospital." She paused, then added, "He's a special boy, Mr. Bennett," Marcus supplied. "Marcus Bennett." Recognition flickered in her eyes, but she didn't comment on his name. Instead, she said, "Alex has been through a lot, more than any child should have to endure. But he's never lost his capacity for kindness. That's rare, especially on the streets." Marcus nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. After a moment, he pulled out a business card and wrote his personal cell number on the back. "If you see him, could you tell him I'd like to talk? No pressure, just talk." Sister Margaret took the card, her expression softening slightly. "I'll pass along the message if I see him, but Mr. Bennett..." She hesitated, then continued, "Children like Alex have learned the hard way not to trust easily. If you're serious about being in his life, you'll need patience, and you'll need to prove yourself worthy of his trust." "I understand," Marcus said, though the task seemed monumentally daunting. "Thank you for your help." As he turned to leave, Sister Margaret called after him, "Mr. Bennett, Alex usually helps serve breakfast on Sundays, 8 a.m. sharp." She gave him a meaningful look. "He takes his responsibilities very seriously." Marcus nodded, understanding the implicit message. If he wanted to rebuild the bridge to his son, he would have to meet Alex on his own terms, in his own world. Back in his car, Marcus looked at his reflection in the window. The face that stared back at him was the same one that had graced magazine covers and business journals, but now he saw it differently. He saw the man who had ignored Elena's emails, who had been too busy with mergers and acquisitions to acknowledge his own child. His phone buzzed with a message from Sophie's nanny. "She's asking for you. Says she wants to tell you about a story she's writing." Marcus smiled despite himself. Sophie had inherited Rachel's creativity, always crafting stories and drawing pictures. Lately, her stories had featured a mysterious helper character, a clear reflection of Alex's impact on her imagination. As his driver navigated through the city traffic, Marcus found himself looking more closely at the people on the streets. How many times had he passed Alex without noticing? How many opportunities to connect had he missed while pursuing his next business deal? The gleaming tower of Bennett Enterprises rose ahead, its glass facade reflecting the afternoon sun. Marcus had always seen it as a symbol of his success, but now it felt more like a monument to his failures as a human being. He had built an empire of steel and glass, but had failed to build the things that truly mattered: family, trust, love. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Maria. Board meeting in 30 minutes. Merger discussion with Tokyo. Investors. For the first time in his career, Marcus typed back, "Reschedule family emergency." Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, "Clear my Sunday mornings indefinitely." The reply came instantly. "Done. Everything okay?" Marcus looked out at the city streets, thinking of Alex serving breakfast to the homeless, of Sophie crafting stories in her hospital bed, of all the years he had wasted chasing the wrong kinds of success. "No," he typed back, "but I'm working on it." Sophie was cleared to return home on a Friday afternoon, her recovery having progressed far beyond the doctor's expectations. As Marcus helped her pack her few belongings from the hospital room, she kept glancing at the adjacent room where Alex had been during the transfusion. "Daddy," she said, holding her stuffed elephant close, "do you think my guardian angel has a home?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "What makes you ask that?" Sophie shrugged, her fingers playing with the elephant's worn ears. "I saw his backpack. It looked like it had everything in it, like he carries his whole home around. That must be heavy." Marcus sat on the edge of the hospital bed, pulling Sophie gently into his lap. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "people carry their homes with them because they haven't found the right place to set them down yet. Like when we moved after Mommy went to heaven," Sophie asked, her voice small. "Something like that," Marcus replied, remembering how they had relocated to the penthouse because their old house held too many memories of Rachel. But sometimes people don't have a choice about moving. Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing this. "I think," she said finally, "that my guardian angel should have a place to put his backpack down, don't you?" Marcus hugged her tighter, marveling at her intuitive understanding of things he had spent years ignoring. "Yes, sweetheart, I think you're right." The drive home was filled with Sophie's excited chatter about returning to her own room, seeing her friends, and getting back to her story writing. But every few minutes she would return to the subject of Alex, though she still referred to him as her guardian angel. "Maybe he likes stories too," she mused, watching the city pass by outside the car window. "His book looked very loved, like My Elephant." Marcus remembered the worn paperback Alex had been reading during the transfusion. He made a mental note to ask Sister Margaret what kind of books the boy preferred. At home, Sophie insisted on stopping at her art table before even unpacking. She pulled out her colored pencils and began drawing with intense concentration. "What are you making, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, setting down her hospital bag. "A map," Sophie replied, not looking up. "For when we find him again." Marcus peered over her shoulder at the drawing. It was a child's version of their city, with the hospital, their building, and St. Michael's Community Center, which she had never seen, all connected by swirling lines in different colors. "See," she pointed to the lines. "These are all the paths he might take. The red ones are for morning, the blue ones for afternoon, and the purple ones are for when it's getting dark." Marcus felt his throat tighten at his daughter's innocent attempt to map the invisible paths of her unknown brother's life. "That's very thoughtful, Sophie, but what makes you so sure we'll find him again?" Sophie looked up at him with Rachel's eyes, full of certainty. "Because he's connected to us now. Like in my drawing, see how all the lines meet in the middle? That's where families are supposed to be." Marcus studied the childish diagram, seeing it suddenly through new eyes. The colorful lines weren't just paths. They were possibilities, connections waiting to be acknowledged and strengthened. "You know what?" he said, pulling up a chair beside her. "I think this map needs more details. What else should we add?" For the next hour, father and daughter worked together on the map, adding parks, libraries, and other places Alex might visit. Sophie insisted on drawing little hearts near each location to help guide him home. As they worked, Marcus's phone remained untouched in his pocket, board meetings and business deals forgotten. For the first time in years, he was fully present, in the moment, watching his daughter's face scrunch in concentration as she added another path to their growing web of possibilities. "Done," Sophie announced finally, holding up the completed map. "Now we just have to follow the lines until we find him." Marcus looked at the colorful creation, thinking of Alex serving breakfast at St. Michael's, of Sister Margaret's knowing look, of all the invisible lines that connected people, even when they tried to deny those connections. "Yes," he said softly, "we just have to follow the lines." Sunday arrived with a soft drizzle that painted the city streets in shades of grey. Marcus stood in his walk-in closet, staring at rows of designer suits and wondering, for the first time in his life, what to wear to a soup kitchen. Finally, he settled on a simple sweater and jeans, clothes he usually reserved for rare weekend moments with Sophie. "Where are you going, Daddy?" Sophie asked as he passed her room. She was already up, working on another variation of her map, this one incorporating weather patterns and rainbow paths. "To follow one of your lines," he replied, touching the red morning path she had drawn to St. Michael's. Sophie's face lit up. "Can I come? I could bring him my map." Marcus hesitated. He wanted to protect both his children, Sophie from the harsh realities of street life, and Alex from feeling pressured or cornered. "Not today, sweetheart, but soon, I promise." The community center looked different in the early morning light. The line outside was longer than his previous visit, filled with people seeking a warm breakfast and shelter from the rain. Marcus joined the queue, ignoring the curious glances at his obviously expensive shoes. Inside, the cafeteria was buzzing with quiet activity. Volunteers moved efficiently between tables, serving coffee and breakfast. And there, behind the serving counter, stood Alex, ladling oatmeal into bowls with careful precision. He wore the same faded t-shirt, but now had a clean apron tied around his waist. Marcus took his place in line, his heart pounding. When he reached the counter, Alex looked up, his expression flickering briefly before settling into careful neutrality. "Oatmeal? Or eggs?" Alex asked, his voice professional, as if serving breakfast to his father was the most normal thing in the world. "Oatmeal," Marcus replied softly. "Sophie's favorite." Alex's hand paused momentarily over the pot. "She's doing better." "Yes, thanks to you." Marcus wanted to say more, but the line was moving, and other hungry people were waiting. He found a seat at a corner table, watching as Alex continued his work. The boy moved with quiet efficiency, but Marcus noticed something else. The way he slipped extra portions to children, how he remembered elderly regulars' preferences, the gentle way he helped a trembling woman steady her tray. Sister Margaret appeared beside Marcus's table, a coffee pot in hand. "He's been doing this every Sunday for months," she said, pouring him a cup. "Never misses a shift, rain or shine." "How?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "How does he manage? School, food, shelter?" The nun's expression hardened slightly. "He's bright, teaches himself from library books. As for the rest," she glanced at Alex, "he manages. Children often do when adults fail them." The rebuke was gentle but clear. Marcus stirred his oatmeal, barely tasting it. "I want to help him." "Do you?" Sister Margaret sat down across from him. "Or do you want to ease your conscience?" Before Marcus could respond, a commotion broke out near the entrance. A young boy had knocked over his tray, spilling food everywhere. The child stood frozen, clearly expecting punishment. But Alex was already there, kneeling beside him. "Hey, it's okay," Alex's voice carried across the quiet room. "Accidents happen. Let's get you a new breakfast, yeah? I spilled my first tray too." The boy's face brightened as Alex helped him. "Get fresh food," even adding an extra piece of fruit with a conspiratorial wink. The entire interaction lasted less than 2 minutes, but it showed Marcus something profound about his son, a kindness that had somehow survived abandonment and hardship. "He didn't learn that from me," Marcus said quietly. Sister Margaret's expression softened slightly. No, he learned it from Elena, and from living in a world where small kindnesses mean everything. The breakfast shift was ending, people filing out into the drizzly morning. Alex began cleaning tables with the same careful attention he'd shown while serving. Marcus remained in his seat, watching, waiting. Finally, when the last table was wiped down, Alex approached. "Why are you here, Mr. Bennett?" The formality of the address stung, but Marcus accepted it as his due. "To see you. To understand." Understand. What? Everything. Who you are, how you live, what you need. Alex's expression remained carefully neutral. "I don't need anything from you." "Maybe not," Marcus agreed, "but I need something from you." This caught Alex's attention. "What?" "A chance," Marcus said simply. "Not to make up for the past. I know I can't, but to be present now if you'll let me." Alex studied him for a long moment, his eyes, Elena's eyes, searching Marcus's face. Finally, he said, "Sophie's map, the one she's been drawing, does it have the library on it?" Marcus blinked, surprised. "How did you know about her map?" A ghost of a smile crossed Alex's face. "I've seen her working on it through the hospital window. She uses a lot of colors." "Yes," Marcus said softly. "She does." Alex untied his apron, hanging it carefully on a hook. "The Central Library opens at noon on Sundays. Sometimes I go there to read." He paused, then added, "If someone wanted to understand, that might be a place to start." It wasn't an invitation exactly, but it wasn't a rejection either. Marcus recognized it for what it was, a small opening, a tiny crack in the wall his son had built around himself. "Thank you," he said, standing up. "For breakfast and for everything else." Alex nodded once, then turned away, disappearing into the kitchen. But Marcus noticed he'd left his worn backpack by the table, a silent signal that he would return, that this conversation wasn't over. Sunday arrived with a soft drizzle that painted the city streets in shades of grey. Marcus stood in his walk-in closet, staring at rows of designer suits and wondering, for the first time in his life, what to wear to a soup kitchen. Finally, he settled on a simple sweater and jeans, clothes he usually reserved for rare weekend moments with Sophie. "Where are you going, Daddy?" Sophie asked as he passed her room. She was already up, working on another variation of her map, this one incorporating weather patterns and rainbow paths. "To follow one of your lines," he replied, touching the red morning path she had drawn, "to St. Michael's." Sophie's face lit up. "Can I come? I could bring him my map." Marcus hesitated. He wanted to protect both his children, Sophie from the harsh realities of street life, and Alex from feeling pressured or cornered. "Not today, sweetheart, but soon, I promise." The community center looked different in the early morning light. The line outside was longer than his previous visit, filled with people seeking a warm breakfast and shelter from the rain. Marcus joined the queue, ignoring the curious glances at his obviously expensive shoes. Inside, the cafeteria was buzzing with quiet activity. Volunteers moved efficiently between tables, serving coffee and breakfast. And there, behind the serving counter, stood Alex, ladling oatmeal into bowls with careful precision. He wore the same faded t-shirt, but now had a clean apron tied around his waist. Marcus took his place in line, his heart pounding. When he reached the counter, Alex looked up, his expression flickering briefly before settling into careful neutrality. "Oatmeal or eggs?" Alex asked, his voice professional, as if serving breakfast to his father was the most normal thing in the world. "Oatmeal," Marcus replied softly. "Sophie's favorite." Alex's hand paused momentarily over the pot. "She's doing better." "Yes, thanks to you." Marcus wanted to say more, but the line was moving, and other hungry people were waiting. He found a seat at a corner table, watching as Alex continued his work. The boy moved with quiet efficiency, but Marcus noticed something else. The way he slipped extra portions to children, how he remembered elderly regulars' preferences, the gentle way he helped a trembling woman steady her tray. Sister Margaret appeared beside Marcus's table, a coffee pot in hand. He's been doing this every Sunday for months, she said, pouring him a cup. Never misses a shift, rain or shine. How? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. How does he manage? School, food, shelter? The nun's expression hardened slightly. He's bright, teaches himself from library books. As for the rest, she glanced at Alex, he manages. Children often do when adults fail them. The rebuke was gentle but clear. Marcus stirred his oatmeal, barely tasting it. I want to help him. Do you? Sister Margaret sat down across from him. Or do you want to ease your conscience? Before Marcus could respond, a commotion broke out near the entrance. A young boy had knocked over his tray, spilling food everywhere. The child stood frozen, clearly expecting punishment. But Alex was already there, kneeling beside him. Hey, it's okay, Alex's voice carried across the quiet room. Accidents happen. Let's get you a new breakfast, yeah? I spilled my first tray too. The boy's face brightened as Alex helped him get fresh food, even adding an extra piece of fruit with a conspiratorial wink. The entire interaction lasted less than 2 minutes, but it showed Marcus something profound about his son, a kindness that had somehow survived abandonment and hardship. He didn't learn that from me, Marcus said quietly. Sister Margaret's expression softened slightly. No, he learned it from Elena, and from living in a world where small kindnesses mean everything. The breakfast shift was ending, people filing out into the drizzly morning. Alex began cleaning tables with the same careful attention he'd shown while serving. Marcus remained in his seat, watching, waiting. Finally, when the last table was wiped down, Alex approached. Why are you here, Mr. Bennett? The formality of the address stung, but Marcus accepted it as his due. To see you, to understand. Understand. What? Everything. Who you are, how you live, what you need. Alex's expression remained carefully neutral. I don't need anything from you. Maybe not, Marcus agreed, but I need something from you. This caught Alex's attention. What? A chance, Marcus said simply. Not to make up for the past. I know I can't, but to be present now, if you'll let me. Alex studied him for a long moment, his eyes, Eleanor's eyes, searching Marcus's face. Finally, he said, Sophie's map, the one she's been drawing. Does it have the library on it? Marcus blinked, surprised. How did you know about her map? A ghost of a smile crossed Alex's face. I've seen her working on it through the hospital window. She uses a lot of colors. Yes, Marcus said softly. She does. Alex untied his apron, hanging it carefully on a hook. The central library opens at noon on Sundays. Sometimes I go there to read. He paused, then added, if someone wanted to understand, that might be a place to start. It wasn't an invitation exactly, but it wasn't a rejection either. Marcus recognized it for what it was. A small opening, a tiny crack in the wall his son had built around himself. Thank you, he said, standing up, for breakfast, and for everything else. Alex nodded once, then turned away, disappearing into the kitchen. But Marcus noticed he'd left his worn backpack by the table, a silent signal that he would return, that this conversation wasn't over. Sophie's face lit up when Marcus told her about the fountain in Robinson Park. She immediately added it to her map, complete with tiny birds, drawn in different colors. Do the birds really come every morning? She asked, carefully coloring a small blue jay. That's what Alex told me, Marcus replied, watching her work. Sophie's hand paused over the paper. You talked to him? To my guardian angel? Yes, sweetheart, at the library and at St. Michael's. She looked up at him with intense concentration. Was he reading? Mom always said you can know a lot about people by what they read. Marcus smiled, remembering Rachel's extensive book collection. Yes, he was reading To Kill a Mockingbird. That's on Mom's shelf, Sophie exclaimed, jumping up and running to the floor-to-ceiling bookcase that had been moved from their old house. She traced the spines until she found the worn copy, pulling it out carefully. Can we read it together? Marcus hesitated, knowing some of the themes might be heavy for an 8-year-old. But then he remembered Alex's words about Scout and how stories help us understand the world better. "Yes," he said, "we can start tonight." Later that evening, after Sophie had fallen asleep halfway through the first chapter, Marcus sat in his home office looking at the cityscape. His phone buzzed with a message from Maria. "Board members requesting emergency meeting about your reduced schedule. Want me to handle it?" He typed back, "Schedule it for tomorrow afternoon, and Maria, find out everything you can about urban community gardens in our area, especially ones with herb sections." The reply came quickly. "Already. On it. There's one near St. Michael's that might interest you. The Bennett Foundation could make a significant impact there." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. The foundation had always been a tax write-off, funding prestigious arts programs and high-profile charity galas. But now he saw an opportunity for something more meaningful. The next morning, instead of heading to the office, Marcus drove to the community garden Alex had mentioned. It was a modest space, tucked between old brick buildings, but it was clearly well loved. Raised beds contained vegetables at various stages of growth, and along one wall a series of small herb gardens thrived. An elderly woman was working among the herbs, her weathered hands gentle as she pruned the plants. She looked up as Marcus approached, her eyes narrowing slightly at his business attire. "Can I help you?" she asked, straightening up with slight difficulty. "I'm looking for the herb garden that Elena Martinez used to tend," Marcus said softly. The woman's expression changed. "You knew Elena?" "Not as well as I should have," he admitted. "I'm Alex's father." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze sharp and assessing. Finally, she said, "These are her herbs. Alex has been taking care of them since she passed. That boy has her touch with growing things." Marcus moved closer, looking at the thriving plants. "They're beautiful." "They're survivors," the woman corrected. "Like Alex. Elena started this garden when she was sick, you know. Said she wanted to leave something living for her son. She paused, then added pointedly, something that would take root and grow no matter what." The metaphor wasn't lost on Marcus. "I'd like to help," he said. "Not just with money, but with actual support, whatever the garden needs." The woman, who introduced herself as Ms. Rose, considered this. "We need better irrigation, seeds for the children's section, tools that aren't falling apart." She looked at him directly. "But more than that, we need people who understand that gardens, like children, need consistent care. You can't just plant something and walk away." "I'm learning that," Marcus said quietly. Ms. Rose nodded toward a collection of seedlings. "Those are mint cuttings Alex started last week. They need transplanting. If you're serious about helping, take off that expensive jacket and I'll show you how." For the next hour, Marcus Bennett, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, knelt in the dirt, learning how to transplant mint seedlings. His suit was ruined, his hands were filthy, and his back ached from the unaccustomed labor. But each time a fragile plant took root in its new soil, he felt a small surge of accomplishment, unlike anything he'd experienced in the corporate world. "You're not half bad at this," Ms. Rose commented as they finished. "Must be some of Elena's touch in you, too." Before Marcus could respond, a familiar voice came from behind them. "The soil's too dry." They turned to see Alex standing there, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved forward, kneeling beside the newly transplanted seedlings. With practiced hands, he adjusted the soil around them, adding just the right amount of water. "Mom always said mint needs more water than you'd think," he explained, not looking at Marcus. "But you have to be careful not to drown it." Marcus watched his son's careful movements, seeing Elena in every gentle touch. Would you teach me about the herbs?" Alex's hands stilled momentarily. "You'd have to come regularly. Plants don't care about busy schedules." "I know," Marcus said. "I can be here every morning before work, or whenever you think is best." Finally, Alex looked up at him. "Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 7 a.m. The herbs need attention before the sun gets too hot." He paused, then added, "And bring proper shoes. Those Italian leather ones won't last a day in the garden." It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't even acceptance really, but it was an opening, a small crack in the wall that Alex had built around himself. Like the mint seedlings they'd just planted, it was fragile and needed careful tending, but with the right care it might just take root and grow. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, Marcus arrived at E, the community garden at 7 sharp, wearing work boots and casual clothes that gradually accumulated their own collection of dirt stains. Alex would already be there, tending to Elena's herbs with quiet concentration. Their interactions were mostly silent at first, with Alex demonstrating techniques and Marcus following his lead. But slowly, like the plants they tended, something began to grow between them. "Mom loved lavender best," Alex said one morning, as they carefully pruned the fragrant plant. Said it reminded her of her grandmother's garden in New Mexico. Marcus absorbed this piece of information hungrily. Each detail about Elena that Alex shared felt like a precious gift, a glimpse into the life he had thoughtlessly dismissed years ago. "What's your favorite?" he asked. Alex considered the question seriously. "Rosemary," he said finally. "It's tough, adaptable, can grow pretty much anywhere if you give it a chance." The metaphor wasn't lost on Marcus. He watched as his son's hands moved confidently among the plants, remembering how those same hands had held a book in the library, had served food at St. Michael's, had given blood to save Sophie. "Speaking of Sophie," Marcus said carefully, "she's been asking about the garden. About you." Alex's hand stilled momentarily. "What did you tell her?" "That I'm learning about herbs from someone very knowledgeable. That maybe, when the time is right, she could learn too." Alex was quiet for a long moment, his focus apparently on a stubborn weed. Finally, he said, "The children's section needs replanting. Ms. Rose said we could put in some easy things, marigolds, cherry tomatoes, things that grow quickly so kids can see the results." Marcus held his breath, understanding the implied suggestion. "Sophie loves cherry tomatoes. She tries to grow them on her balcony, but the wind's too strong up there." "Tuesday mornings are good for planting," Alex said, still not looking up. "The soil's cool then. Better for the seedlings." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. He had purposely kept it on silent during these garden sessions, but this was the third call from the same number in 5 minutes, his emergency line. "I'm sorry," he said, pulling out the phone. "I have to take this." Alex nodded, already turning back to his work, but as Marcus stepped away to take the call, he noticed his son's shoulders tense slightly, as if expecting disappointment. The call was brief but urgent, a major problem, with their Asia-Pacific operations that required immediate attention. As Marcus ended the call, he looked at his soil-stained hands, then at Alex's bent head among the herbs. Making his decision, he dialed Maria's number. "Cancel my morning meetings, all of them, and get James to handle the Singapore situation. He knows the territory better anyway." He could hear Maria's surprise even through her professional tone. "The board won't like that." "The board doesn't have to like it," Marcus replied firmly. "Some things are more important than quarterly reports." When he returned to the herb garden, Alex was still working, but his posture had relaxed slightly. "Is everything okay?" the boy asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Nothing that can't wait," Marcus replied, kneeling back down beside him. "Now, you were saying something about the children's section." Alex looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to solve a particularly complex puzzle. Then, reaching into his worn backpack, he pulled out a crumpled packet of cherry tomato seeds. "Mom saved these from last year's crop," he said, holding them out. "She said good seeds should be shared. That's how gardens grow." Marcus took the packet with the reverence it deserved, not just seeds, but a piece of Elena's legacy, offered freely by their son. "Thank you," he said softly. "Just don't forget." "What I said about regular watering," Alex replied, but there was a hint of a smile in his voice. "Plants don't care. They're about emergency phone calls." As they worked side by side in the morning sunshine, Marcus thought about growth. Not the kind that showed up on balance sheets and annual reports, but the slow, steady kind that happened in gardens and relationships. The kind that required patience, attention, and the willingness to get your hands dirty. His phone buzzed again in his pocket, but this time he didn't even check it. Instead, he listened as Alex explained how to prepare the soil for the new seedlings, his son's voice growing more animated as he shared his knowledge. Some calls, Marcus was learning, were more important than others. The morning of Sophie's first visit to the garden dawned clear and bright. Marcus had spent the previous evening explaining to her that her guardian angel would be there, and that she needed to be gentle and patient, just like with her balcony plants. "Like when you transplanted Mom's roses?" Sophie had asked, referring to the delicate operation of moving Rachel's prized rose bushes to their new home. "Exactly like that," Marcus had replied, marveling at his daughter's intuitive understanding. Some things need time to adjust to new soil. Now, as they walked through the quiet morning streets, Sophie clutched her garden tools, child-sized implements in cheerful colors, and a copy of her latest map. She had added the garden in careful detail, complete with tiny herbs drawn in different shades of green. Alex was already there when they arrived, preparing the children's section with methodical care. He looked up as they approached, his expression carefully neutral, though Marcus noticed his hands tighten slightly on the trowel he was holding. Sophie stopped a few feet away, studying Alex with intense concentration. "You look different without the hospital lights," she said finally. Alex blinked, clearly surprised by this opening. "So do you," he replied. "Better." Sophie nodded solemnly. "Because of you. Daddy explained about the special blood you gave me." She took a step forward, holding out her map. "I brought you something to say thank you." Alex took the offered paper carefully, his eyes widening as he studied the detailed drawings. "You included the fountain," he said softly. "And the birds," Sophie added eagerly. "Daddy said you see them in the morning. I drew blue jays because they're my favorite, but I can add different ones if you know what kind really come." A ghost of a smile touched Alex's lips. "Mostly sparrows. And sometimes a red cardinal early in the morning." Sophie immediately pulled a red pencil from her pocket. "Show me where. I want to make it exactly right." For a moment, Alex hesitated. Then, setting aside his trowel, he knelt beside Sophie as she spread the map on a clear patch of ground. Together, they began marking the cardinal's favorite spots, Sophie's bright chatter mixing with Alex's quiet explanations. Marcus stepped back, giving them space. He found Ms. Rose at the herb garden, her knowing smile suggesting she'd been watching the scene unfold. "Children," she said softly, "have a way of cutting through all the complications we adults create." "She has her mother's gift for that," Marcus replied, watching as Sophie showed Alex her garden tools, explaining very seriously why she had chosen purple ones. "And he has Elena's gift for listening," Ms. Rose added. "Look at how carefully he's paying attention to every word." It was true. Despite his initial reserve, Alex was fully engaged with Sophie, answering her questions about plants and birds with patient detail. When she asked about planting the cherry tomatoes, he demonstrated the proper depth for the seeds, letting her measure with her small fingers. "Not too deep," he explained, "or they'll have trouble reaching the sun. Like when you're learning to swim," Sophie said thoughtfully. "If you go too deep too fast, it's harder to come up for air." Alex looked at her with surprise, and something in his carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. "Yeah," he said, softly. "Exactly like that." They worked together for the next hour, planting seeds in neat rows. Sophie named each tomato plant she put in the ground. "This one's Robert and this is Lisa, and this one has to be Charlie because it's sitting next to Robert." "Plants don't usually have names," Alex said, but he was smiling slightly. "Everything important should have a name," Sophie declared. "That's what Mom always said. She named all her roses, remember, Daddy?" Marcus nodded, remembering Rachel's rose garden and its carefully labeled inhabitants. She said it helped them grow better, knowing they were loved. "Did your mom name her plants?" Sophie asked Alex innocently. A shadow passed over Alex's face, but instead of withdrawing, he said quietly, "She named the herbs. The lavender was Abuela, after her grandmother. And the rosemary..." He paused. Then continued, "She called it Alexito, little Alex." Sophie beamed. "That's perfect. Can we name these herbs too?" She gestured to the new seedlings they had planted. "Maybe," Alex said carefully, "but we should wait until they show us who they are. Mom said plants, like people, need time to reveal their true nature." Sophie considered this seriously. That makes sense. Like how Robert the tomato plant might turn out to be a Rachel instead, once it grows up. A real laugh escaped Alex then, brief but genuine. The sound seemed to surprise him as much as it delighted Sophie, who grinned triumphantly. "You know, what else Mum used to say about gardens?" she asked, patting soil around another seedling. "That they're like families, sometimes messy, sometimes complicated, but always growing in unexpected ways." Marcus watched as Alex absorbed this, saw the way his son's shoulders tensed and then deliberately relaxed. "Your mom sounds wise," Alex said finally. "She was," Sophie replied simply, "like your mum with the herbs." She looked up at Alex, her expression suddenly serious. "Do you think they would have been friends? Our moms?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Marcus held his breath, but Alex just looked at the herb garden, where Elena's plants thrived alongside the new seedlings they had planted together. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think they would have understood each other really well." The garden. Sessions became a regular part of their lives. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, Sophie would arrive with her colorful tools and endless questions, while Alex gradually opened up, sharing his knowledge of plants and birds. Marcus watched their relationship unfold like a delicate seedling, requiring both nurture and space to grow. One morning, as Sophie carefully watered her named tomato plants, she asked, "Alex, where do you read when it rains? The library doesn't open until late on weekends." The question caught both Alex and Marcus off guard. They had never discussed Alex's living situation directly, maintaining an unspoken agreement to focus on the present rather than the harsh realities of his circumstances. "I find places," Alex said vaguely, but Sophie wasn't satisfied. "But what about your books? They could get wet." She looked genuinely distressed by this possibility. "Daddy, couldn't Alex use the library in our building? It's always open, and it has those nice big chairs like the ones at Mum's old house." Marcus saw Alex tense, preparing to retreat behind his walls. But before either of them could respond, Sophie continued, "And then maybe you could help me with my homework sometimes. I'm reading Bridge to Terabithia for school, and Ms. Martinez says I need to practice reading." Out loud to someone. The mention of his mother's surname caused Alex to still completely. Sophie, oblivious to the impact of her words, kept talking. "It's funny, she has the same last name as you. She's new this year, and she's really nice. She lets us have reading time in the garden when it's sunny." Marcus watched his son's face carefully, seeing the emotions play across it before being carefully controlled. "Sophie," he said gently, "let's not overwhelm Alex with too many questions at once." But Alex surprised them both by saying, "I like Bridge to Terabithia. The library has a copy with really good illustrations." Sophie's face lit up. "Have you read the part where they build their secret kingdom? I'm having trouble with some of the big words there." "Yeah, I know that part." Alex's voice was soft but steady. "It's about finding magic in ordinary places, making something special out of what you have. Like this garden," Sophie said thoughtfully. "It's kind of like our Terabithia, isn't it? A special place where different things can grow." Marcus watched as Alex absorbed this comparison, saw how it resonated with something deep inside his son. "The building library," Alex said finally, "does it really have big chairs?" "The biggest," Sophie exclaimed, "and windows that go all the way to the ceiling. You can see the whole city, even the fountain with your birds." Alex looked at Marcus, a question in his eyes. Marcus chose his words carefully. "The library is open to anyone in the building. That includes friends of the family." "Friends of the family," Alex repeated, testing the phrase. "Like Ms. Rose," Sophie added helpfully. "She comes up sometimes to look at Daddy's gardening books, and she always tells me stories about different plants." Something shifted in Alex's expression then, a recognition, perhaps, that there were ways to be connected without being trapped, to be close without being confined. "Maybe," he said slowly, I could look at those gardening books sometime. For research. And help me with my reading, Sophie asked hopefully. We'll see, Alex replied, but his voice was gentle. One step at a time, okay, like with the seedlings. Sophie nodded sagely. Right. Too much water at once can drown them. You have to let them grow at their own pace. Later, as they were packing up their tools, Alex pulled something from his backpack, a slightly wrinkled piece of paper. Here, he said, handing it to Sophie, for your map collection. It was a careful drawing of the garden layout, with all the herbs labeled in neat handwriting. In one corner, Alex had sketched a small cardinal perched on the garden wall. Sophie clutched the drawing to her chest. Now we can make a perfect map together, with all the plants and birds in exactly the right places. Together, Alex echoed softly. And this time, when he looked at Marcus, there was something new in his eyes. Not quite trust, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of possibility. As they walked home, Sophie chatted excitedly about combining her map with Alex's drawing. Marcus listened, his mind on the way his son had said together, like a word in a foreign language that he was just learning to pronounce, unfamiliar, but full of promise. The building's library was silent except for Sophie's careful voice as she read aloud from Bridge to Terabithia. She sat cross-legged in one of the oversized chairs, while Alex perched more formally in another, listening and occasionally helping with the more challenging words. Marcus watched them from his position near the window, pretending to work on his tablet, but actually observing this delicate new dynamic. It had taken 2 weeks after their conversation in the garden for Alex to finally accept Sophie's invitation to the library, and even now he maintained a careful distance, physically and emotionally. Sometimes it seemed to him that his life was delicate as a dandelion, Sophie read slowly. One little puff from any direction and it was blown to bits. What does that mean, Alex? Alex was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently tracing the worn edge of his own copy of the book, a library edition he'd brought with him. It means that sometimes life feels very fragile, he said finally. Like everything could change, in an instant. Sophie considered this. Like when I got sick. Yeah, Alex said softly. Like that. But you made it less fragile, Sophie said with certainty. You made it stronger, like how the tomato plants need stakes to grow tall. Marcus saw Alex's hands tighten slightly on his book. These moments of raw honesty from Sophie often caught his son off guard, breaking through his carefully constructed defenses. Speaking of the tomatoes, Alex said, clearly trying to redirect the conversation, we should check if any of them need replanting. Sometimes they outgrow their first spots. Like people? Sophie asked. Sometimes they need new spots too, right? The question hung in the air, its implications clear. Marcus held his breath, but Alex just nodded slowly. Sometimes, he agreed, if the new soil is good. Sophie beamed. Our soil is excellent. Ms. Rose said so when she came to look at Daddy's gardening books. She said the building's library has the best collection she's ever seen. It is impressive, Alex admitted, looking around at the floor-to-ceiling shelves. I've never seen some of these editions before. Marcus chose this moment to speak up. You're welcome to borrow any of them. We could get you a library card for the building. Alex's eyes met his, careful and assessing. I wouldn't want to impose. It's not imposing, Sophie declared firmly. It's sharing, like how you share your garden knowledge with us. A ghost of a smile touched Alex's lips. You make everything sound so simple. Because it is, Sophie replied with the absolute conviction of an 8-year-old. You help me with reading, I help you name plants, and Daddy helps by getting dirty in the garden even though his suits are very expensive. This actually drew a small laugh from Alex. He's getting better at not ruining his clothes, he admitted, though his weeding technique still needs work. Hey, Marcus protested mildly, grateful for this moment of lightness. I'm learning. Very slowly, Alex and Sophie said in unison, then looked at each other in surprise before Sophie dissolved into giggles. The moment was interrupted by Maria appearing in the library doorway. Mr. Bennett, the board is asking about the quarterly projections. Marcus saw Alex immediately begin to withdraw, his posture stiffening. But before Marcus could respond, Sophie spoke up. "Daddy can't do projections right now," she said firmly. "We're in the middle of a very important chapter, and Alex is going to show me how to make pressed flowers for my science project." Maria, who had been with the family long enough to understand the delicacy of the situation, smoothly replied, "Of course. I'll reschedule the meeting. Would you like me to bring some flower pressing supplies from the craft room?" Sophie bounced excitedly in her chair. "Can we, Alex? Please, I have some pansies from the garden that would be perfect." Alex looked torn between his instinct to retreat and Sophie's infectious enthusiasm. I suppose we could try a few," he said cautiously. "If you have the right materials." "I'll bring everything you need," Maria promised, giving Marcus a subtle nod before disappearing. "I've never pressed flowers before," Sophie confided to Alex, "but Mom did. There's a whole book of them in her study. Daddy, can we show Alex?" Marcus watched his son carefully. "Only if Alex wants to see them." Alex was quiet for a moment, his fingers still tracing the edge of his book. "Your mom," he said finally, looking at Sophie. "She liked gardens too?" "She loved them. She had roses and lilies and all sorts of flowers. Some of them are on our balcony now, but they're not as happy there. Daddy says they miss their old home." "Plants remember," Alex said softly. "Mom always said they carry memories in their roots." "Then we should share those memories," Sophie declared, "like how you shared your mom's herb garden with us." Marcus saw something shift in Alex's expression, a softening, a small crack in the wall. "It's okay," his son said quietly. "Show me your mom's flowers." As Sophie led them to Rachel's study, chattering about the pressed flower collection, Marcus noticed that Alex walked differently now, less like someone ready to flee at any moment, and more like someone cautiously exploring new territory. The study was exactly as Rachel had left it, with her books and photographs still arranged on the shelves. Alex paused in the doorway, taking in the scene with careful attention. "Here it is," Sophie announced, pulling out a large album bound in green leather. Mom called it her garden diary. As they gathered around the album, Marcus watched Alex's face. His son studied each preserved flower with the same gentle concentration he showed in the garden, listening intently as Sophie explained which ones had come from where. "And this one," Sophie said, pointing to a pressed rose, "was from their first date." "Right, Daddy?" "That's right," Marcus said softly. "Your mother always said it was important to preserve beautiful moments." Alex touched the page gently. "Mom kept a journal too," he said quietly, "with drawings of her herbs and notes about how to care for them." "Do you still have it?" Sophie asked. Alex shook his head. "It got lost when things changed." The sadness in his voice made Sophie reach out instinctively, but she caught herself, remembering to give him space. Instead, she said, "Then we should make a new one for both our mums. We can put your herbs and Mum's flowers together." Marcus watched as Alex considered this suggestion, saw the way he looked around the study at the photographs of Rachel, a woman who had loved gardens and books and family, just like his own mother had. "Maybe," Alex said finally, "one page at a time." The pressed flower project became a regular part of their library meetings. Maria had sourced professional pressing equipment, and Sophie's science project expanded into something more meaningful, a combination of Alex's herb knowledge and Rachel's flower preservation techniques. "This is sage," Alex explained one afternoon, carefully arranging leaves between sheets of special paper. "Mum used it for cooking, but also for cleansing. She said it helped clear away negative energy." Sophie nodded seriously. "Like Mom's lavender sachets, she put them in all the drawers to make the clothes smell nice and help everyone sleep better." She paused, then added, "Daddy still puts them in our drawers sometimes." Marcus, who had been pretending to read nearby, felt his throat tighten. He did indeed maintain Rachel's tradition of lavender sachets, though he'd never mentioned it to anyone. "Lavender's good for sleep," Alex agreed. "And for comfort. That's why—" He hesitated, then continued. "That's why Mom planted so much of it during the hard times." It was the most direct reference he'd made to Eleanor's illness, and Marcus found himself holding his breath. But Sophie, with her uncanny intuition, simply said, "Then we should definitely include it in our book. Both kinds, Mom's and your Mum's. That way their comfort can be together." Alex's hands stilled over the pressing papers. "You really think they would have liked that? Being together in the same book?" "Of course," Sophie said with certainty. "They both loved gardens and books and their children, and they both knew about important things, like how to name plants and make spaces feel like home." Marcus watched. As Alex absorbed this, saw how the parallel between their mothers, both gone too soon, both leaving legacies of love and growth, affected his son. "Your mum's study," Alex said. Suddenly, looking around the warm, book-filled room, "It feels like a garden itself. All these memories, preserved and growing." "That's what Mom always said," Sophie exclaimed. "She called it her indoor garden. She said books are like seeds. They contain whole worlds just waiting to grow in your mind." A small smile touched Alex's lips. Mom used to say something similar about her herbs, that each one contained stories and healing if you knew how to listen. "Then we're really making a garden book," Sophie declared, carefully positioning. "Another flower. A place where all their stories can grow together." Marcus saw Alex blink rapidly, though his voice remained steady. Maybe we could add some of Mom's herb notes too. I remember most of them." "Yes," Sophie bounced excitedly. "And I can add Mom's flower meanings. She had them all written down somewhere." She looked at Marcus expectantly. "In the blue notebook on the top shelf," he said softly. "The one with the silver stars on the cover." As Sophie bounded off to find the notebook, Alex looked at Marcus. "You remember where everything is?" he said, not quite a question. "I couldn't bear to change anything," Marcus admitted. "After Rachel, it felt important to keep her spaces exactly as she left them, to preserve something of her world for Sophie." Alex nodded slowly. "Mom's herbs were like that. Even when she couldn't tend them anymore, I kept everything exactly how she'd arranged it. The tools, the markers, the way she organized the beds. It was the most they'd ever spoken about Elena directly, and Marcus felt the weight of the moment. "I should have been there," he said quietly, "for both of you." Alex's hands tightened on the pressing papers, but his voice remained calm. "You're here now." Before Marcus could respond, Sophie returned with the notebook, its pages stuffed with pressed flowers and Rachel's elegant handwriting. "Look," she said, opening it carefully. "Mom wrote all about flower languages, like how roses mean love and daisies mean innocence, and..." As Sophie explained each flower's meaning, Marcus watched Alex examining Rachel's notes with the same respectful attention he gave to his garden work. There was something profound in the way his son handled these pieces of Rachel's life, as if understanding that, just as he was sharing Elena's legacy with them, they were sharing Rachel's with him. "We should add these meanings to our book, too," Alex said finally, "next to the pressed flowers, and maybe we could write some of Mum's herb wisdom beside them. Show how they all connect." Sophie's face lit up. "Yes, like a map, but with flowers and herbs instead of streets and buildings." "A map of growing things," Alex agreed, and for the first time his smile reached his eyes. "Of all the ways plants and people can bloom together." Marcus watched as his children, and the word felt right, even if Alex wasn't ready to hear it yet, began planning their collaborative garden book. In Rachel's study, surrounded by her books and memories, something new was taking root. A bridge between past and present, between loss and hope, between two families that were slowly, carefully becoming one. The weather forecast had predicted storms, but nobody expected the severity of the system that swept through the city that night. Thunder crashed overhead as Marcus worked late in his home office, reviewing documents that seemed increasingly insignificant as the wind howled outside. Sophie appeared in his doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant. "Daddy, I'm worried about the garden. What if the storm hurts our plants?" Marcus was about to reassure her when another thought hit him with the force of the lightning outside. "Alex," he said suddenly, "he usually sleeps near St. Michael's." Sophie's eyes widened. But it's not safe out there. The wind is so strong and the rain. Marcus was already reaching for his phone, dialing Sister Margaret's number. After 3 rings, she answered, her voice tight with concern. "I was just about to call you," she said. "Alex isn't in his usual spots. Some of the other children said he was worried about the community garden, something about new seedlings that needed protection." Marcus felt his heart clench. They had planted a new section of herbs just yesterday, rare varieties that Alex had carefully sourced and nurtured. "I'm going to find him." "The streets are flooding," Sister Margaret warned. "Be careful." Sophie was already pulling on her rain boots. "I'm coming too." "No, sweetheart. You need to stay here where it's safe. Maria will stay with you." "But he's my brother." The words burst out of Sophie with such certainty that Marcus froze. She had never used that term before, had never explicitly acknowledged the relationship they all knew existed. "You know?" he asked softly. Sophie gave him a look that was pure Rachel, patient but slightly exasperated. "Daddy, I've known since the hospital. The way he looks at Mom's flowers, how he remembers things like she did, how his hands move just like yours when he's working in the garden. Plus," she added with the impeccable logic of a child, "why else would his blood be exactly right for me?" Thunder crashed overhead, bringing Marcus back to the urgent present. "We'll talk about this more later," he promised. "But right, now I need you to stay here and be safe. Can you do that?" Sophie nodded reluctantly. "Just bring him home, okay, both of you?" The word home echoed in Marcus's mind as he drove through the storm-lashed streets. The community garden was dark when he arrived, but he could make out a figure moving among the raised beds, attempting to secure tarps over the most vulnerable plants. "Alex!" he called out, fighting against the wind. His son looked up, rain streaming down his face. "The new herbs," he shouted back. "They won't survive exposure like this. The roots aren't established yet." Marcus made his way carefully through the garden, noting how Alex had already protected most of the beds. Only the newest section remained exposed, the tiny plants bending dangerously in the wind. "Let me help," Marcus said, grabbing one end of a heavy tarp. Together they worked to secure it, their hands slipping on the wet material. "Mom's journal said these varieties are almost extinct," Alex explained, his voice barely audible over the storm. "She wanted to preserve them, to keep their stories." "Alive, I can't let them die." The raw emotion in his voice struck Marcus harder than the driving rain. This wasn't just about plants. It was about preserving Elena's legacy, about keeping promises, about not losing anything more. "We won't," Marcus assured him. "But Alex, you can't stay out here. It's not safe." As if to emphasize his point, a terrible cracking sound came from overhead. They looked up to see a large branch from the neighboring property's tree beginning to give way. "Move!" Marcus shouted, grabbing Alex and pulling him clear, just as the branch crashed down where they had been standing. It missed the protected herb beds but crushed the small shelter where Marcus knew Alex often slept. They stood there, both breathing heavily, staring at the destruction. Alex's backpack, which had been in the shelter, was partially visible beneath the branches. "My books," Alex said quietly. "Mom's pictures." Marcus kept his hand on Alex's shoulder, feeling the boy trembling from cold or emotion he couldn't tell. "Come home with me," he said softly. "Please." Alex stiffened. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," Marcus replied. "It's family. That's what Sophie called you, you know, her brother." A flash of lightning illuminated Alex's face, showing a complex mix of longing and fear. "I can't just—" "Yes, you can," Marcus interrupted gently. "One step at a time, remember, like with the seedlings. Tonight you need a safe place to sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." Another crack of thunder, closer this time. Alex looked at his destroyed shelter, at the protected herb beds, at the rain-slick streets around them. "Sophie really called me her brother?" "She did. She also told me to bring you home. Both of us." Alex was quiet for a long moment, rain dripping from his hair. Finally, he said, "I need to check the tarps one more time, make sure they're secure." Marcus recognized this for what it was, not a refusal, but a need to complete his responsibilities before taking such a monumental step. Of course, I'll help. They worked in silence, double-checking every covering. When they finished, Alex retrieved his sodden backpack from under the fallen branch, clutching it close despite its ruined state. "Ready?" Marcus asked. Alex looked around the garden one last time, then nodded slowly. Just for tonight," he said. "Because of the storm." Marcus didn't argue, knowing that sometimes the biggest journeys began with the smallest steps. As they drove home through the rain-slicked streets, he noticed Alex watching the building's illuminated windows grow larger, like beacons in the storm. "Sophie will be waiting up," Marcus said softly. "She was worried about you." "She worries about everything," Alex replied, but there was warmth in his voice. "The plants, the birds, the people in her stories." "Like her mother," Marcus said. "Rachel could never rest if she thought someone needed help." "Mom was like that too," Alex admitted quietly. "Even when she was sick, she worried more about me than herself." They pulled into the building's garage, the sudden silence after the storm almost deafening. As they rode the elevator up, Alex's wet backpack leaving small puddles on the floor, Marcus thought about Elena, about her gentle strength, her love of growing things, her determination to leave something beautiful for her son. He thought about Rachel too, and how she would have opened her heart and home to this boy without hesitation. The elevator doors opened, and Sophie was there waiting, still in her rain boots, her elephant clutched tight. She took in their drenched state with wide eyes, then held out her free hand to Alex. "I made hot chocolate," she said simply. "Mom's recipe, the one with cinnamon." The storm passed, but things had shifted irreversibly during that rain-lashed night. Although Alex had said he would stay just for tonight, somehow the next day turned into the next week, and then the next. The guest room gradually accumulated small signs of permanence: books borrowed from the building's library, pressed flowers from his and Sophie's ongoing project, a small potted rosemary plant on the windowsill. No one mentioned these changes directly. Instead, they built new routines around them. Morning garden visits became more structured, with proper equipment stored in the building's garage. The library sessions extended into homework time, with Alex helping Sophie while working on his own studies. Sister Margaret had connected him with a program for gifted students, and Marcus had quietly ensured all fees were covered. 1 month after the storm, Marcus came home early to find Alex and Sophie in Rachel's study, surrounded by their nearly completed garden book. The large volume now contained pressed flowers and herbs from both their mothers, with careful notes in 3 different handwritings: Rachel's elegant script, Eleanor's preserved herb wisdom, transcribed by Alex, and Sophie's enthusiastic additions. "Look, Daddy!" Sophie exclaimed. "We found the perfect ending for our book." Marcus moved closer, noticing how Alex didn't tense at his approach anymore. The final page showed a pressed sprig of rosemary, the tough, adaptable plant that Alex had first identified with, surrounded by delicate pressed rose petals from Rachel's collection. "See?" Sophie pointed to their careful notes. "Rosemary for remembrance and roses for love. Alex said it was the right way to bring both our gardens together." Marcus looked at his son, who was focusing intently on adjusting one of the rose petals. "It's perfect," he said softly. "We thought," Alex said, still not looking up, "that maybe we could plant them together, in the community garden, a new section with Mum's herbs and Rachel's roses." The use of Rachel's name, not your mom or Sophie's mom, felt significant. It was an acknowledgement of connection, of shared history. "The roses haven't been happy on the balcony," Sophie added. "They need more space to grow like Alex's herbs, and Ms. Rose said there's a perfect spot near the herb garden that gets just the right amount of sun." Marcus thought about the roses he'd transplanted after Rachel's passing, how they'd never quite thrived in their confined space. "I think," he said carefully, "that would be exactly what both your mothers would have wanted." Alex finally looked up, his expression open in a way it rarely was. "Really?" "Really," Marcus confirmed. Both of them understood about creating beautiful things, about helping things grow. He paused, then added, about building families in unexpected ways. A comfortable silence fell over the study, broken only by the sound of Sophie arranging pressed flowers. Finally, Alex spoke, his voice quiet but steady. I found something yesterday when we were cleaning out the old shelter. He reached into his backpack, a new one, though he'd insisted on keeping the old one too, and pulled out a battered journal. It was in a waterproof bag at the bottom. I thought it was lost in the storm, but... He held it out to Marcus. It was Elena's garden journal, its pages wavy with age but still intact. Mom would have wanted you to see it too, Alex said softly. To understand everything. Marcus took the journal with trembling hands, understanding the magnitude of what was being offered. Not just Eleanor's writings, but Alex's trust, his willingness to share this precious piece of his mother. We could add it to our book, Sophie suggested. Not the actual journal, but maybe copies of some pages, so both our mum's garden wisdom is together. Alex nodded slowly. Yeah, I think they'd like that. Marcus watched as his children, and now finally, he could think of them that way without reservation, began carefully selecting pages to copy. The study filled with their quiet conversation about plants and memories, about growth and family, about all the ways love could bloom in unexpected places. Outside, the afternoon sun illuminated the balcony where Rachel's roses waited to be transplanted. Soon they would join Elena's herbs in the community garden, creating a new space where two families' legacies could grow together. But the real garden, Marcus realized, was right here in this room, in the trust growing between father and son, in the bond between brother and sister, in the way they had all learned to nurture the delicate seedlings of connection and love. Daddy? Sophie's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Alex says we should have a garden dedication ceremony when we plant the roses, like how Mom used to celebrate each new flower, she added. Could we do that? Marcus looked at Alex, who met his gaze, steadily. I think that's a wonderful idea, he said. The celebration of new beginnings. And remembrance, Alex added quietly, of all the love that helped us grow. Sophie beamed, adding another pressed flower to their book. Outside, a cardinal landed on the balcony railing, one of Alex's morning, "Birds come to visit